Hello and welcome to Sean's Thoughts. You're with me today and this piranha plant who's watching over me again, making sure that I don't, harm any plants. And yet, unfortunately, there are no plants in my washroom or my bathing room or however it is that you call it in your country. Welcome to this interesting and exclusive episode of Sean's Thoughts, where I essentially stress the idea that being authentic is amazing. Today's episode, I'm titling currently, anyways, The Power of Being Authentic. And part of the reason why I'm drawn to create this podcast perhaps today is yesterday I had an extraordinary and insightful experience when I recorded my podcast. Because if you haven't seen it yet, I definitely encourage you to go back to yesterday. It was May 2nd's podcast that streamed both live on Rumble and YouTube. And today I'm kind of, in a sense, doing a follow up because yesterday's podcast truly got me to a really vulnerable state because while I was sharing my authenticity and, the things that I was essentially playing with in my mind, the ideas, the concepts, the experiences of other people that I had researched and listened to and truly spent time getting to know these people and their experiences based on TV shows and, actual real live reality TV show. I forgot what it was called, but something to do with sister wives. But, anyways, I was at the same time while I was sharing my thoughts with you that I also was actually having my own thoughts, means I was thinking again about the things that I was discussing and talking about. And, there was kind of two different experiences going on with at the same time. And essentially, when it comes down to it, it was a wonderful example of me being vulnerable and sharing. And actually, after I was finished the podcast, I started to think to myself about the things that I had shared, the things that I had said, and I, reflected back on the possibility of what people may say sometime down in the future. See, right now, what I'm able to experience or what I'm able to perceive from the reach and the audience of my podcast, as well as most of my other channels, is very limited. And what I mean is that when I look into the analytics on YouTube and I look into, well, the comments and such, and even the engagement and interactions with my podcast, it's very limited. So I'm unaware of how far the reach of this is getting out. Yet I understand that when we put our ripple, our light, our love out into the world, it honestly really doesn't matter how far it gets in that moment because energy lasts forever, meaning that whatever you put out in the world, just like they did with the radio waves supposedly back in the 1970s, they go on forever. And they're picked up by perhaps people that we no longer perceive, we're no longer aware of, people that, we were maybe never even ever aware of. And yet, you know, sharing one person's honesty and authenticity is of the utmost important, especially to me. But yet, it puts us in a state of vulnerability because in our old world, or at least in my old world, we would question what we said, or we would review and play it over in our mind and we would rehearse it. And that's kind of maybe why I brought this mirror here, is because, one of the activities that I even participated in my own healing journey was standing in front of a mirror and repeating things to myself, you know, getting comfortable with not just my own image, but also hearing what I would have to say about what I was saying. And yet, the power of truly being authentic is being able to walk into any conversation and do a standout job regardless if I've rehearsed 100 times or not. Of course, that would have to happen right when I was doing something. Like I said, I'm uncertain who it was, but it could have been connected to someone that was trying to get into my building, like alert me that they were here. So I apologize. Thank you for, staying with me if you're here. And if you are here, it's for a reason. Like trust in yourself that if you are guided here for it's for a reason. And anyways, one thing before I go into on the whole thing with authenticity, that's a tongue twister of a word of sorts. But what I realized mostly about yesterday and standing within the light and sharing my innermost thoughts with you was that the reason why my podcast is here is to challenge your expectations, challenge my expectations, challenge the world expectations of what perhaps reality, our lives, our social upbringing, the communities and overall the way we govern ourselves, the way that we look at money, the way that we allow money to control who we are and to essentially, in a sense, manipulate us. And essentially this is about challenging our routines and our habits and these ideas that we form to get us to a place of creating patterns which limit us, and while at the same time limiting us, they control us by bringing us back to those exact same patterns. And so in the future I'm going to be talking about all these different topics, including my topic of yesterday, which was about exploring how we outline and delineate and how we create relationships, whether the romantic, whether they're the way our families are organized, whether and how our parental structures are organized. And so you know yeah, I wanted to put that out there because that's the biggest thing that I recognized. And it's also about being able to be truthful and honest. See, one of the ways we'll get to a loving world in which I see is living in honesty. Being honest not with just with yourself, but with the world around, and being able to express yourself differently. So, regardless if you have a family that is, not your traditional normal family, some children may have two mothers and some children may have two fathers. Some children might have two fathers and a mother, or even two of both. Who knows? Some people might grow up living with a whole different family structure in the future than we could have ever imagined now. And as we release those control mechanisms based on us by these systems and stand more in our authenticity, then we essentially allow ourselves to be greater than we were. And if we're truthful and honest with ourselves, we will therefore be more open and accepting and compassionate towards people who do choose to express themselves in other ways than we have previously known. And that will allow us, at least in my opinion, and also my own experience, to wear clothes that look differently, you know, be who I feel I am based on my energy and my authentic expression of myself, as opposed to feel that I have to practice and rehearse. And, you know, many times in my past when I was in high school getting ready to do a presentation or even in acting. See, I might have known when I was an actor in high school all of my lines, yet I was nervous because I, I wasn't standing in that I did stand and I did rehearse, but yet as I became more confident, as I became more, it doesn't matter if I mess up. I can make a presentation, I can slip up on a sentence, and I'm cool with it. I don't need to laugh it off. I can if I want to. And when I first started doing presentations, I definitely did a lot of laughing at myself. But yet at the same time, I allowed that information, that flow of wisdom and knowledge to essentially come from my lips rather than sitting and writing down like 100 notes about everything that I wanted to say. Or when I did my very first presentation at the Global Information Network, I wrote down the whole entire script. And then about one third of the way through, I scrapped it and I just started talking. And I made mistakes. I blundered. I laughed with myself. I added jokes in, and it became a lot easier because I chose to, accept all the good, all the not so good, and everything in between. And so that's kind of why I come and I share this with you. Actually, I also share this with you for many different other reasons as well. And this is my bathroom, as I said, and I essentially decorated it myself. One of the things that I had learned when I was working at the Brick was merchandising, and that was setting up things to look pretty and such. And so I put this wallpaper here because the wall behind it is pretty gross. Not gross in the disgusting, but the drywall is kind of like not very well. And you can't see it, but up in the corner up there, they actually had water damage from the apartment that was above me. And where there was approximately a hole about yay size, which is approximately 1 inch in circumference or radius or whatever. It was a pretty large hole in the corner of the roof of my bathroom, which was basically worn away and eroded because of the water damage from the apartment below me. And, anyways, so I'm quite proud that I was actually able to get that drywall stuff, the ones that you fill holes with. And I actually filled the whole entire corner and kind of like squared it out so it looked like, a normal corner of drywall and such. And so I was pretty proud of that. And, I've always loved making where I live represent which made me happy, that made me comfortable. And most importantly, that represented who I was and a wonderful place for my son to grow up, regardless of the circumstances that I found myself in. So, yeah. And, this piranha plant here, this is a perfect example of a placed prop. Actually, I just put it here because I wanted to have something extra, something green to have in here. I've always, liked the idea of having light and, green life within my bathroom. Unfortunately, the particular location of the bathroom in this apartment complex is in the interior. So I don't have any windows, and therefore I can't really have like organic life living in here. Although you honestly know in everyone's bathroom, you got organic life living somewhere. So, yeah, I definitely, I would encourage the entire world to step into more of their own personal authenticity and, be who you are. And, I have an amazing story that actually reflects to this particular bathtub that I'm in. See, as I mentioned before, I've been going through a journey that has been lasting several years. Actually, it started prior to, the 2020, 2019 event that we had all went through. And it was very uniquely tailored or perhaps crafted for me. And this whole experience, it really, really taught me a lot. And so I'm going to, paint a picture, and I want to show you the difference between who I perhaps once was and who I've become. And even with that person that I've become, I've definitely jet setted away from that as well. So back in, I guess it was 2020 or 2021, probably, there was a situation where my bathtub overflowed. And see, the whole reason why it overflowed is because I had had some work done recently or prior to that where they were fixing a leak in the shower curtain, or the not the curtain, the shower nozzle. And so, anyways, they were fixing a leak. And what they'd actually done in order to fix a leak is they used all of that foam stuff, and it filled up and it plugged up the drain in the actual bathtub. So on a bathtub, there is a valve that allows, if the water gets too high, then the water is able to get out, so that if you had that slow drain, that the water would be able to get out. And what actually had happened was one night while I was at home and I had company over, my son had put had left the drain on from when he had had his bath, and he had forgotten to fully remove the plug. And so that slow drain after a few hours, because no one had noticed and everyone was busy, it started to fill up. And because of that slow drain, the water filled up and overflowed, and it actually ended up going onto the apartment below us. And when that had happened, I was completely devastated, of course, and I felt terrible for the person who lived below me, because I had went down, and although he wasn't home, I think he had went away for that day. I could see through the window that things were dripping. So I recognized right away. See, at that time, I was living more in a fearful state where I was essentially worried about so many different things, worried about how much it would cost to fix it, worried about the insurance part, worried about, you know, my standing in the building, worried about. So what I did was, of course, I quickly cleaned it up, and I attempted to go downstairs to notify the person. And, I even thought about sneaking into his apartment building through his apartment window in order to help clean it up. But the point being is that I was worried. And then when I was not able to do that, I simply tried to avoid the whole situation. Now, this I totally regretted, but yet I allowed myself to go through all of this, and I didn't truthfully or fully hold myself accountable. I tried to dodge, my accountability for the situation. Although I did recognize I wasn't fully accountable for it, because I knew the drain, it was plugged. And although I had mentioned it to the property company that runs this building, I had never properly followed up on it. I didn't actually push. I just kind of, said something, and then a year went by, and, nothing ever happened, and I just let it go. Meaning I didn't fully hold myself accountable for getting that repair made. And so when this happened, I was frantic. I was concerned about all the small things, as opposed to, you know, I was angry at my son for what he had done, although he really didn't do anything on purpose. Anyways, my whole point was that that happened. And the person that I was when that happened was a completely different person to when it happened again 2.5 years later. Now, this particular circumstance was very, very different. Actually, what had happened was the same thing had happened. This time, however, the some of the repairs were finished, but yet the floor itself still had a hole in it, and the drain was still plugged, and a lot of other different things were still. So therefore I was, in a sense, still that person who wasn't really pushing people to get the repairs done. This being a rental, a property, it's up to the building management in order to repair it. But yet I didn't hold myself accountable to make sure that had happened. But when it happened, this time being different, I had actually, I guess, in a sense, blacked out. I had started to fill up the bathtub for a bath, and then I blacked out. And when I came to, the flooding had happened. And although, it happened this time, my reaction was completely different. So instead of trying to, hold someone else accountable, I, of course, quickly cleaned up. And then I actually attempted to go notify everyone. I knocked on everyone's door. I held myself accountable right away. I apologized right away. I was trying to do the cleanup. I was trying to do more than I had done. Initially, when it happened, I actually first, almost fell into that routine of the same, blame, and you did this and you didn't do that, and all this other stuff. But I realized very quickly that none of that mattered. What mattered the most was the gentleman who lived below me. And so I wanted to, I knocked on his door. I helped with the mopping up. I wanted to play my role in making sure that this was resolved as soon as possible. I even went back to him and I offered. And actually, I had made a promise to myself that one day I am going to hold and buy him a whole bunch of toilet paper, rolls of, or bags of toilet paper, because apparently that had got damaged. And then even after that, I held myself accountable. I once again followed up on making sure these repairs would get done. And, they will eventually, of course, get done. But nonetheless, it was a wonderful example, at least for me, how even within that 2 years of time, when I look back at those two situations, how holding myself in an authentic light and recognizing and learning and healing and trusting, that's an important part about being authentic as well. It's trusting in the people that you share things with. It's trusting in that the words that come out of your mouth, if they're not perfect, all you need to do is correct them. Even in the world of editing, people can edit it. Even now in a world of AI, we can change our words that come out of our mouth. But that's not my point, and that's not necessarily what I'm trying to explain. I mean that we have the ability to adjust, to be better versions of ourselves. And when we reflect and look back at how we treated others or even how we treated ourselves, that we're able to hold ourselves accountable for those situations. So rather than having to stand in front of a camera or a mirror now rehearsing what I have to say over and over again, I just trust the words that come out will be what I want to say. And if I start to blunder up and start to make little bits of messes like I did at the end of yesterday's podcast, where I started to think about, oh, what do I actually think about what I'm talking about? And then I started to like have that dual experience of listening and speaking at the exact same time. I didn't worry about messing up. I was confident and happy that I was authentically being myself. And, I recognize that that information will stay online forever. But I also recognize, though, something that's uniquely perhaps to, people who explore alternative realities and such, that almost everything perhaps that we do in life has always remained. In fact, some of you people that are viewing me now, perhaps you've been in this bathroom, or maybe you astral traveled, or quantum leapt here for some reason, or you were in a slightly different dimension or something. There's a lot of different possibilities, so perhaps you've already been here. That's the dog jumping at trying to eat a fly or a bee as it flies around. So, anyways, yeah, I just wanted to actually, I'm going to take a drink because that was a lot of talking. Yes, I love talking, but one of the cool signs that my grandmother had is that we are born with two ears and one mouth. So use them appropriately. So I definitely also love listening. And then that's maybe why often I comment about, leaving comments, because I love hearing what people have to say. I love reading, authentic and truthful comments when people leave them. And of course, I love to respond, but yet I also do truly appreciate receiving them. And I'm definitely, definitely open to receiving all of the miracles that are incoming for all of us. And so as we move forward, as we all, search within ourselves and we heal those traumas and we heal those limitations that are holding us back from being authentic, I truly, truly do believe that we are going to be all a part of a wondrous and magnificent community going forward. So, as always, I invite you to, obviously subscribe, but nonetheless, what's most important though is that you come over and visit me on Patreon. Join up even for free, interact and engage with the community that I'm building there, for together we will be stronger. We will be like that, you know, bundle of twigs that together we'll not be able to be broken, and together we'll actually ripple and inspire us all to greater heights. So, thank you for joining your attention with me in this less than opulent spot, but yet it's a place where I visit every day. So welcome to the my inner world, to who I am truly. And in everyone's bathroom, when we aren't wearing our makeup, when our hair isn't done, when it's just us in the mirror in that private moment, what if we could all be that truthful with the whole world around us? Wouldn't that be amazing? I honestly think so. So I'm looking forward to sharing more time with you. And thank you so much for joining and sharing. And I highly encourage you, whatever video that I have up that comes on after this, click on it. That's important to YouTube and Rumble. They like to see those engagements. Well, not Rumble so much because they don't give you as much control over which videos go next and such. But YouTube definitely likes that engagement. And I'm here to stay, and I hope you are as well. So thank you so much. My name is Sean with a W, and you've just listened to Sean's Thoughts. Have a wonderful day and mind the camera as I walk towards it and turn it off. Thank you very much. Love you so much. Bye.